So you just got off the main stage.
Yes.
But for those that are just tuning in, why don't you give a little brief introduction?
For me or
Yes,
for
for
what we
you.
just talked about? Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Allie Miller. I'm the CEO of Open Machine, and most of my time is spent advising Fortune 500 companies and top startups on AI. And then when I have free time, usually at 3 o'clock in the morning, I post on the internet and try and help the world figure out how to move into the AI age.
That's when you're not traversing the world, right? You just got back from Seoul, am I right?
I did. It's a 16-hour flight straight into the conference, and it is, AI optimized. I use an app to actually deal with jet lag, so I feel totally fine.
Wow, we'll get into that in a bit. But for now, jumping off of what you just spoke about on stage, you shared quite a few examples of different enterprises using AI in what you call the 3P framework. But on the other hand, lots of people are saying, you know what? AI in the enterprise hasn't really lived up to its true potential yet. We're seeing a lot of pilots, a lot of examples like this, but in terms of wide-scale deployment, there's a side that believes we haven't really reached the full potential. Where do you think we are in enterprise adoption of AI right now?
So if you look at pretty much any tech movement, there's at least a rule of thumb that I go through for timeline. So you have something come out in research, and then usually about 3 years later, it starts popping up in startups. And then because those startups have to get funded, have to go through POCs and design partners and scale and eventually figure out how they're going to make money, usually about 3 years later is when it hits enterprise. And so I think we're right on track for enterprise adoption. I think a lot of engineers in Silicon Valley believe that AI is somehow different and can change human behavior in 12 seconds, and it just can't. So enterprise adoption really does take 3 years. I do think that enterprises are also waking up to the idea that faster adoption is required. But for now, I think it's on track. The second piece, and I know that the audience includes students and startups and enterprises alike. If you are an enterprise, okay, I will address you guys. If you are an enterprise, the majority of things that I see before I come in and get to work with a client, it's two prime failure modes. The first is not realizing that behavior change is going to be such a big part of this. It might be behavior change for your executive team. It might be behavior change for your engineers or product teams. It might be behavior change for your customer support team or your end customers. But behavior change takes time, and you have to bake that into your assumptions and your work from the beginning. That's number one. The second is honestly setting the wrong KPIs. I think a lot of people go into these AI use cases thinking that it's going to make them $1 billion and completely change the face of their company forever and always. And what they really should be doing is figuring out how those outputs are being created today, and then figuring out if AI can help, and then figuring out by how much would it need to help to then be successful. So a lot of the use cases might be 70% and still be great.
I love what you brought up about behavior change, because I've been looking at a bunch of reports that talk about how, the excitement is not matching up to adoption in the enterprise. And one reason is because leadership is not being clear. People are actually scared. Slack actually is going to come out with some numbers today, and so is another startup inside Portco. And both of them say the same thing, which is, leadership is not being clear enough about what to use AI for, what exactly, LLMs or tools to use. From your perspective, what can leadership be doing at this point to change that?
So I don't think that's specific to those leaders. I mean, even the AI labs don't know how you're going to be using these tools. I think that people who are creative, people who are able to iterate really fast and able to experiment, that was a big focus of the talk, was adapting for that rate of change. Part of that is your ability to iterate. So what I would say is, your leader sounds like every other leader, and sounds like even the best AI labs out there, which is they are purposefully giving you an open space. Now, the flip side of that is the majority of enterprises are giving too wide of a space. And to your point, they're just kind of saying like, hey, we bought this product, do something. So giving some guardrails, largely on policy, just making sure that like secret IP is not uploaded to some public cloud, right? That might be a guardrail that they give. The last piece is that you have people in your company, or maybe it's you, who are doing unbelievable work, who have spent thousands of hours using these AI tools over the last 2 years. And that's kind of who you need to put on a pedestal and give them the floor and give them the opportunity to actually share with the company and the leaders how they're using AI in their work. It tends to be people who have seen enough of the business so they know how things work, but are probably not the most senior leaders at your companies. And so finding those champions, giving them that pedestal, those are the 3 things I would do.
So you brought this up a little bit in your talk, but I want to dive a little deeper into agents. Someone I was talking to last week mentioned how some of these ethical concerns around privacy, data, and guardrails can be addressed by agents because they are trained to do specific tasks. I wonder if you agree with that, and if not, you know, everyone's talking about agents. When are we actually going to be able to, I don't know, when is an agent going to be able to look at my calendar and say, oh, you have December off, we should book you a trip to see your parents in India?
Yeah, I'll answer the last part, which is like, the calendar space weirdly is so hard. Like it is not really touched by Gen AI yet in a meaningful way. And you'll see this on online forums where people are just like, where are the calendar apps? So to all the founders out there, please God, make some good calendar apps. Reason being is because the way that your calendar is managed, then I'll get to the data privacy part. The way that your calendar is managed requires so much nuance and knowledge about you and your life. And maybe you like your Fridays a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you just came off of a 16-hour flight and maybe you don't want a ton of meetings the next day. And an AI agent is not yet taking that into account because that preference is not baked into your calendar anywhere. It's not obvious. And so we have to come up with systems where agents can better understand your preferences. To your point on data privacy and policy, sure, if that was the only thing that we cared about in terms of like what data types to use. But even then, I would say that people get it wrong, right? Even if you told people, hey, don't put in code, a couple things happen. One is they're so desperate or the task is so urgent that that's the only way to complete it. Another way might be, and I'm sure you see this at your company too, like things are just labeled wrong. It's very hard to actually know what is truly confidential data without having a bit of deeper knowledge in the enterprise. So I don't think that having AI or even like a rules-based system necessarily fixes that. What I do think is interesting is that calendar piece that I just said, which is how can we get AI agents 2 things. One is better understanding our intentions and needs. And there's a paper that came out years ago on inverse reinforcement learning that I'm still praying will become a startup. And that is trying to figure out and uncover human preferences. And the second is access to resources. And I think enterprises really haven't cracked that. The startups are just now coming up. The ability for AI to access money. You know, I was just at a dinner of like top banking engineers, and they were all asking, like, are you giving your AI agents mod rights? Like, are they able to actually make edits in code and then publish that? And the majority of people said no. Right? So these systems are not yet good enough, even with those guardrails in place, to be able to be trusted to make those edits and then publish. We're just not there yet. Maybe 2025 will bring it for higher risk places. Maybe it'll bring it for smaller POCs. But what I predicted at the beginning of this year was that 2024 was going to be the year of multimodal AI, and 2025 was going to be the year of AI agents.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold you to that and bring you back to a prediction question at the end. Now, we discussed the challenges when it comes to, you know, enterprise adoption of AI. Yeah. But on the other hand, all these, you know, AI companies and labs seem to be hitting a plateau when it comes to training. and training bigger models with more and more data and compute is no longer working. What's next after this pre-training scaling law, and where, what could be the next sort of breakthrough in AI models?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to disagree with the assumption that they're plateauing. I think the growth is slowing, but it's still growing. If you look at any of the OpenAI, Reddit, AMA, if you look at what Anthropic is releasing, if you look at what the majority of these companies are coming out with, it's really that reasoning side. So there's type 1 and type 2 thinking. Type 1 is the super fast instinct, quick replies. And type 2 is kind of this methodical, researchy vibe. All of the AI models up until the O1 series were really type 1.
Right.
It was like, write me a poem in the style of Shakespeare being drunk about striped shirts. And it was like, right? Type 2 is just now coming out. Really, that's in the last 2 months.
Right.
And so every single AI lab is focused on that type 2 thinking. This idea that you could ask an agent, hey, find me XYZ. And that agent goes off for hours and then comes back to you with an answer. Or maybe it's a really complex task of plan my entire birthday party, book all these vendors, whatever, and it'll go off for days and then come back. That wasn't really what we were seeing at the launch of ChatGPT. So I do think that there's going to be this slower, methodical, logical research type things coming out, and that it's the combination of those two, once those two streets remerge, where the maybe not even hockey stick, but where the next kind of step function growth will be.
Cool. So we heard about how AI labs are, dealing with all the changes right now, how enterprises can adopt AI better for the general audience viewing in right now. Job market changes are also a big discussion in the whole AI concept. How do you think things will change? If you are a salesperson right now, you're probably using something like Gong. If you're customer service, you're using multiple agents. Which areas do you think
Are people using multiple agents in customer support?
Are they not?
I think the majority of companies have no idea what an AI agent is. Maybe the people watching this do, but customer support are more likely to be using RAG-based setups to get answers back.
I guess what I'm saying is, it's going to change a lot.
Absolutely,
the function, right? So if you were someone entering the job market right now or looking to make a change, how would you position yourself in this new AI era? And what functions do you think people should just really rethink because AI is going to take over?
So first is, I have no skin in the game to say that jobs won't be impacted. Jobs will absolutely be impacted. And we would be doing ourselves a massive disservice, especially to the younger generation, to say that it won't. So that is just chopping the head off the monster, number one. Skills-wise, some of the most important things are still critical thinking, curiosity. I cannot tell you how many people I talk to where I'll, show them over dinner or something, some AI thing, and they go, I wonder if it can, I wonder if it can make me a grocery list. And I just hand them my phone and I go, why are you asking me? Figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
And so the people who convert the open questions into action, see how the AI is responding, and then keep going, those are the people who are better off for the next several years. And the people who continually just kind of philosophize about maybe it'll do this, maybe it'll do this, they will fall behind. That's number one. On the ability to experiment, literally yesterday, Amanda Askell was one of the Anthropic interviewees on Lex Fridman, and she said that the best prompt engineering, yes, is writing good natural language and figuring it out, but the second best component is that experiment and iteration. She said that the best prompts that they're working on, they might iterate through hundreds or thousands for one prompt. Right. It's a scale that people aren't even thinking about. People go, oh, I tested it twice. And I go, why don't you test it 200 times?
Right.
Right? People who are able to carve out time and force themselves to experiment, that's really, really where it's going to be helped. Every single function is going to be an AI-fueled version of that role. So to your point, sales will be AI-fueled sales. Customer support will be AI-fueled customer support. we're still at a point where enterprises have too much liability with their end customers to like fully offload for large things like customer support and sales. What they are doing is offloading the smaller, more repetitive tasks, right? So something like if I'm the seller and you're my customer and you and I are having a conversation, it used to be that I had to like then go into Salesforce and type up all these things, and it took a lot of time to maintain data hygiene. New version is AI is recording our entire conversation, automatically updates the entry for you, automatically triggers when I should reach out to you, automatically gives you the script that I should reach out to you with. And so AI is really enabling that process. That's what the majority of enterprises are doing today. The forward-thinking enterprises are now using agents in the lead gen space, but they still know that the majority of end customers are not yet using AI. They're not attending ScaleUp AI. They're people who are probably a little scared of AI, and they don't really want to be talking to an AI voice to make that final sale.
So to your point about experimentation, right? Obviously, I cover this space. I try to do that all the time.
She's great. You should follow her.
Sometimes it doesn't work well, right? Like I was in Zanzibar and I got stung by a sea urchin, and I was like, let me use ChatGPT to see what I should do. And it was like, go see a doctor right now. And I was like, well, I'm on a remote island, so no. What else can I do? Anyway, my point there is...
Wait, what did it say after that?
I don't remember. This was 3 months ago. But my point there is...
Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay.
It was painful.
Okay.
Do not get stung by a sea urchin. But my point there is sometimes, you know, it's limited in what it churns out. Sometimes it hallucinates. There's a bunch of other ethical concerns. Which one are you the most concerned about, and why?
So first, I would say that the places where I feel comfortable using these AI systems is when a totally number one answer is not required. So something like, how do you treat this sting, right? That is a very one right answer sort of thing.
I should use like a medical LLM or something.
Exactly. Or just a medical human or something. So when it's not one right answer, Google calls this NORA, no one right answer. That's when it's actually really helpful. One example, only because you shared the sea urchin story, I'll share this. I had food poisoning back to back, and it was bad, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I talked back and forth to ChatGPT to like keep me awake and give me motivation and tell me everything was going to be okay. I mean, that's like the saddest story I think I've ever shared, but that did not require a right answer. I was not asking when did Abraham Lincoln, when was he born? I asked a very open-ended question. When things require a right answer and when the trade-off of a wrong answer is very high, that's the high-risk use cases. So the EU AI Act actually has this like great pyramid of AI use cases, and they have a top tier of like, don't do it ever. Those are definitely the highest risk. That's things like determining who did a crime, using AI to figure out who to hire. That not only has a right-ish answer, but we only feel comfortable with human subjectivity on those use cases. And so if you're figuring out what use case to start with, certainly start toward the bottom of that, like taking call transcripts and putting it into a CRM. There's so much boring, repetitive stuff that can still be automated that I would love to have AI take on. But for now, honestly, any of these search engines, Perplexity, SearchGPT, they hallucinate so much still.
Well, we could go on and on here, but I do want to leave some time for audience questions. We have 2 here. Let's see if we can get to both of them. I'll read them out to...
That or make the font size way bigger.
I will read out the first one for the benefit of those watching. Most of these AI investments might take some time to show tangible impact. Even attributing the exact impact of AI projects might be a little tricky. In such cases, how should organizations manage their AI investments and return risk approach?
Yeah, so I break the AI use cases up into 3 different categories. I call it dot dash star. Dot is this like really specific line of business use case that might be things like that sales call transcript example. Dash is sort of empowering your whole workforce with something like ChatGPT Enterprise, Microsoft Copilot, or something similar. And then the last category is the star, some big revenue generating AI investment. Each of those has different KPIs and different return time frame. So the dot should be something that's proven. Oftentimes that return is about like 3 months, 6 months if you're a slower moving enterprise, but really 3 to 6 months. On the people side, it's very hard to measure that one. If you're hoping for these perfect KPIs of employee happiness or productivity, it'll be hard to come across. And so that one is the tricky one. You just have to have faith that it's the right decision. And then the third is on revenue. That is largely the KPI. It might be also efficiency to hit a similar revenue, but the time to value for that might be longer, might be like 1 to 2 years. And so you kind of first have to diagnose the type of AI use case that you're looking at, and what it is supposed to do for your business, what business metric it is tasked to improve, and then again, figuring out kind of where it falls in. I've heard of way too many people swap these two things where they go, oh, okay, line of business use case, that'll take 2 years, and it's like an HR bot. Like, no, that should not take 2 years to prove value, or else you're never going to move forward past POCs.
Right. So our second question refers to something you spoke about on stage, but you had mentioned aligning your company's AI with the company's values for decision making. Can you go into a bit more detail on what that looks like practically and how conflicts in values or decision making are handled?
So constitutional AI is probably the biggest like proof point that you can look at in this, which is how do you actually infuse your constitution? I have an Allie constitution. Everyone on my team has like their constitution of their value system into an AI.
Did you use an LLM to build that?
No, actually, I've had an Allie constitution since I think 2017. I would highly recommend it. It is like a very nice self-reflection. Anyways, it lives in a Google Doc, just like floating on the cloud. So I'm sure other people can steal it. So first is coming up with your constitution, and then figuring out how it can go from there. Anthropic has a public constitution that it infuses into these systems, so I would read through theirs. Right now, you can kind of like just put it into the prompt, and you'll see the types of decision outputs and how it changes. So if your value system is caution or human trust, right, the ability to put that into the prompt, you need to be testing the system to see what that output is. My future prediction, since I know you were asking about the future, and probably this is the last question, my assumption is that not only will there be a Tanya AI and an Allie AI and a Rachel AI and a Bob AI, but there will be ways, like via model fusion or something similar, where we're able to combine our models, where it's Tanya plus Allie, and what do our shared values get us to, right? Or it'll be Tanya plus Allie.
So there'll be like marriage constitutions.
Uh-oh. All right, that's actually a really good prediction. I mean, I could see that happening.
Yeah.
Like, there are people doing weirder things today. It's just not public and not talked about.
Yeah.
But that is absolutely happening. It's just not on AI. So I really do think that there's going to be ways of recombining. And if you think about that on a global scale, it can get pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we have like 25 seconds. But you said 2024 was going to be about multimodal AI. 2025 is going to be about agents. Would you like to add an addendum or fix that or add something to it?
That still sounds pretty right. So at the end of every year, I make a list of all of my predictions for the next year and a reflection on the past year of the highlights. And so I'm already starting to go through the one from about a year ago to see how many I got right. And it looks very high in case people want to.
You should share that on LinkedIn. And
I did.
Oh, you
I'll
did? You did already?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'd love to take a look. Yeah. Thank you, Allie.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you.